I'm going to share with you guys an analogy that a friend of the show, Paul, shared as a reply to a Facebook post I saw recently. The context being that the person who made the Facebook post was struggling to get views on their listing. They had essentially done everything that they thought they could do, from accepting returns to free shipping to being priced, I guess, more competitive, though not the cheapest. Did point out that they were competing with a lot of Chinese-based products as well. And for those of you guys who sell on eBay regularly, you know that you can't compete with China. If something comes out of China and you're selling it from Australia or from the States, China's gonna win. China outbound products getting out of China, very hard to compete with, purely because their shipping is very cheap. And also, most of us get our products from China, essentially. So if the product goes from China to the buyer, but for us, from China to us, and then from us with expensive shipping to buyers, it's a pretty straightforward numbers game. But anyways, here's the analogy he shared. I'm not going to change it. I'm going to tell it to you word for word because it very much encapsulates the situation that this person's in. And you might be in there too, and we'll talk about that. And here's how it goes. I think of it like this. If you started up a baked beans company and went to Woolworths, grocery store, big grocery store, and said, hey, I'd like to put my cans on your shelf, they'd say, sure, just pay us an extra 10% of the sale and we'll give you some shelf space. But if not many sell, after we give you the shelf space in aisle 3, then we're going to move you to the shelf in the basement next to the disused lavatory, toilet, and the noisy ice machine. Also, your item would have to be cheaper than Heinz and SPC before we'll even consider it. And even if you'll survive all this, the other 15 generic brands might just drop their price to squash you like the cockroach you are, in which case we hope you really like beans. It seems harsh, but I immediately thought about the number of times I've tried to notice a not big brand on the shelves. It's really hard, and we're talking about, you go to the aisle where you get your bread, right? So your habits already bring you to that place where the product is. Okay, so I'm going to the portion of the shelf where bread is. I see the two big competing brands of bread that want me to spend money on them. And then there's always a sliver of random brands of breads that try and convince me that they are better bread. Usually they're either more expensive or if they're cheaper, they're a smaller loaf. I don't consider it because I can't even tell you what those brands are, to be honest. And I go to the bread aisle like twice a week. So that kind of tells you that even if eBay brings the buyer to the same shelf search as where you are, if you are a small player and if you don't have a compelling offering that makes the buyer break their pattern, they are just not going to notice you. And you need to also acknowledge that when you play in a competitive market, many generic brands want to take the spot that you currently occupy. The other thing about the internet is, with eBay, there are unlimited slots. Sure, those of you who are going to jump on this point, I know what you're going to say. eBay only shows this many listings. But here's the thing. That's random too. It's based on buyer behavior, it's based on buyer pattern, it's based on who the algorithm thinks, will buy. So if your listing happens to compel a particular, so even if your listing may not turn up for you, it will still turn up for somebody else. Even then though, right? Let's say we go from 100,000 listings and eBay goes, you know what? When the person searches for this item, we're going to narrow it down to 30,000. We're going to narrow it down to 5,000. Even if you make it into that 5,000, if you are not compelling as a listing, you're not going to be noticed, you're not going to be bought. That's the reality of it. It got me quite hard actually, this example, because I went through bread, I went to milk, I went to baked beans, I went to chips, I went to, sweets, I just started working my way through the things I buy on a regular basis. And I cannot come up with a brand. The only thing that really came to mind was with chocolate, you've got like Lindt, that's the premium, then Ferrero Rocher. but they're not small. They're big. They're quite big. And then you've got like Whittaker's. Maybe Whittaker's is like a bit more of a niche brand that they do, fancy nuts and richer chocolate. But it's such a shame because you as a small seller, you put in all this thought and energy to enrich your offering. Like an offering, for those of you guys who don't know, an offering is just whatever you present to the buyer. So it could be a combination of the brand, the product, the price, the shipping, the returns policy, the way you take photos, all of that, right? That's the offering, okay? So you put all this thought, this sweat, these tears into this offering, and it comes out like Whittaker's. And Whittaker's on its own looks amazing. The packaging is gold, the colors are like really, like it's like that royal, like when they use green, it's not like cheap green, it's like rich British English kind of like that the green that you expect to see on a pool table but a little bit darker makes you feel fancy. But the thing is, they still when placed side by side with Cadbury and Mars and Snickers and every other random chocolate brand, like you don't notice Whittaker's, despite the fact that the seller placed so much effort enriching the brand. Do people buy Whittaker's? Yes. Those who have tried and like Whittaker's. Those who have been made to feel the way Whittaker's wants them to feel, and then they want the experience again. But at that point, they bypass the shelf and they go straight to Whittaker's, right? So Whittaker's is now their regular thing. And that's the point. Back to the original context of this video and this post. This seller wants to be noticed in the general shelf. He's not talking about buyers who already come to him and like dealing with him and so forth. He's talking about how do I become more visible in the grand scheme of things on eBay. And fundamentally speaking, you can't. You can't. And that's the reality of it. If you're a small player, you can't. All you've got is sort by price. That's it. If you've exhausted free returns, if you've exhausted free 60, heck, 90-day returns, if that ever becomes a thing, if you've exhausted promoted listings, if you've exhausted, the best photos and description and everything, all you're left with is numbers. And so, when choosing, this raises a bunch of different points, right? And we'll try to work our way through them. When choosing a product to sell, just because it's a product that historically has sold does not mean that you should get on board, because you are signing up to be part of sales history, meaning that it has historically sold before. I want a piece of that pie. But unless you are able to compete on numbers, you are signing up to be a small brand of baked beans next to Heinz and SPC. That's the reality of it. I don't care what you think about yourself. I don't care how amazing you think you are going to do. The odds work against you. And recognizing that sets you up to actually make really sound decisions. If you go in there, and especially those of you who are like dreamers, I'm a dreamer, right? And I've had to learn this the hard way. I've had to kind of go, no, the numbers do work against me. That's not my category. Because otherwise, I can't get Jenny on board. Let alone my parents, my sisters, the people who help me to do family things, watch the kids when I need to do more business related things, go for conferences, go sourcing, spend a whole day, in a different state. Like those things require help, and help doesn't come if I am not realistic, if my head's in the clouds, right? So choosing to participate in a competitive category, you have to be aware that the numbers. If you are able to then succeed despite higher numbers, then maybe you've learned a thing or two. Maybe the category is competitive but not competitive enough. Maybe you're that new flavor that the category needed to provide a bit of variety. You can only find out, right? But at least be aware that there will be a race to the bottom faster than you might be prepared to absorb. And then the second thing is, it's not eBay's fault. It really isn't. I cannot stress this enough. The number of times sellers get onto eBay and think that they deserve the fair go that every seller is given. No, it's not fair. Well, actually, it is fair. If I've spent 10 years selling in the same category on eBay and grown my store to $1 million a year, and you're just starting out, it is fair that I make everyone ignore you. If you've spent 10 years on the platform and 10 other people come in with imitation products, it is fair that eBay promotes you more than them because you've got the track record. That's fair. So do not confuse that with fair opportunity. The platform is open. It's an infinite shelf space. You're given a go. Similar to the example of random brand of baked beans wanting to be put next to Heinz and SPC, hoping to sell a couple of cans. And even then, the store already says you might want to make it cheaper just to entice somebody. So, two things. If you're going to go into a competitive category because you want the certainty, and I get the certainty, I get it. I get that selling random things is a lot riskier because there's no history, there's no historical data. You could easily discover a new category of item to sell on eBay that you could be the leader in. But for the most part, we are starting out without any experience. I understand the desire to sell something that has already been proven to sell. It comes with competition, it's hand in hand. Prepare for the numbers thing. Secondly, it's not eBay's fault if you can't compete. It's not eBay's fault if you don't have visibility. It doesn't help you to blame eBay either. I mean, blaming eBay literally achieves nothing. Recognizing the dynamic of what gives items visibility helps you to see every platform differently and also see every platform as the same. They're all just shelves. They're all just shelves allowing you to put your stuff on them. It's up to you to give buyers a compelling reason to pick your item off the shelf. So yeah, thanks Paul for this analogy. Thanks for providing the start for this post. I have been liquidating stock quite crazily. And by liquidating, I mean that, you know what, I'll talk about it in another video. This one's gone a bit too long already. So yes, thanks for watching this video. Thanks for giving me your time. I appreciate it. Happy reselling. Take care, guys.